Welcome to the Virtual Business Owners Network on Friday, the 18th of October, where our guest speaker today is Seamus Power, and he's going to be talking about the impact of your inner voice. Can I put it across to you, Seamus? And you have the ability to share there as well if you're making a presentation.
No, thanks, Alec. There's no presentation. It's really more conversational and looking for feedback, I suppose, as we go through the whole topic of inner voice and what it is and the power of inner voice and the benefits and the downsides, I guess, of our inner voice. And I'd love to hear people's perspectives maybe as we go through, or maybe questions afterwards. What we spoke about already, actually, it's a really nice lead in when you talked about artificial intelligence. You talked about, the business of an external world. And I think our inner voice, we sometimes forget about the inner intelligence we all possess as human beings. And, in our lead up to today's conversation, Alec, I think we've briefly spoken about communication, and communication as a central part of how we communicate with our customers, how we manage our employees, how we, every aspect of what we do, it's dependent on, built on clear communication, concise communication. But often we forget about communication within ourselves. And that's really what I wanted to speak about today, and invite people to think about how you are with your own communication through your inner voice and how it serves, and maybe how it doesn't serve as well. And I think our conversation today maybe is a small example of the complexity that's going on within our heads, of the different voices and maybe rogue voices that pop up. And we have the inner voice that's very helpful and serving us very well, which it is designed to do. Every human being has an inner voice, and it's often referred to as the narrative of or the narrator of our thoughts. And it can be a very kind narrator and a very beneficial narrator. And it is running all the time, and it's there to actually help us to test and validate hypotheses. It's there to help us make great decisions. It's there to help us really make sense of a busy world, both on the outside and on the inside. And really today I wanted to focus about how we can actually use a couple of simple tools to better navigate and make sense of and challenge and become discerning around when our inner voice is serving us and when our inner voice is actually a destructive force that's not serving us at all, and can actually even be a saboteur. So what I was thinking about today was a simple example of a very powerful inner voice or mantra that we've all developed, certainly those in Ireland who, I'll ask the question, remember the Safe Cross Code. Does anyone here, a show of hands, remember the Safe Cross Code? And if you're in Ireland, brought up in the 70s or 80s, you will remember the Safe Cross Code. And another question is, what are the three words that, if you recall and know the Safe Cross Code, that come to mind when you think about the Safe Cross Code? Can you remember those words? What the three key words are?
Stop, look, listen.
Stop, look, and listen.
Yeah, exactly. So that's an example. That's a very, very simple example of an inner voice that serves us very well as kids and as adults, and how we've learned, like the jingle. And I still clearly recall the jingle, Brendan Grace and his beautiful melody singing the Safe Cross Code. And I'm not going to butcher it here right now, because within my own mind, I still hear Brendan Grace singing that beautiful little jingle, 30-second jingle. Remember, one, look for a safe place. Two, don't hurry, stop and wait. And I still hear that in my own voice, but I went to actually articulate that and sing that right now, I basically butcher it. So our inner voice has a great way of reproducing high quality content for us and serves us. And again, in a really, really wonderful way, because immediately we think about the jingle, it brings back that sense of safety. It brings back that sense of a specific application of our inner voice to solve a particular problem of crossing the road. And it breaks it down into stop, look, listen. And that still 50 years later for me is a powerful reminder of an inner voice that serves. A very simple example of a problem that we've resolved and remains resolved when we allow our inner voice to lead us and guide us. But what often happens in a busy world, and again, that's the nature of inner voice. It's there as a very, very complete problem solver, a very effective problem solver, to solve simpler problems like crossing the road. And again, it assists us, like we just mentioned, in solving many other problems, like to test hypotheses, test permutations, to actually really allow us to actually test and validate problems that we come across every day. And we have the power through our inner voice, through this kind, caring, guiding narrator within ourselves that serves us very well in engaging with and resolving everyday problems and challenges. But what happens, and often happens, and this is where we begin to engage with the dark underbelly of our inner voice, is when we allow our inner voice to go rogue, if you want. So that kind narrator turns into a bully, turns into a saboteur, and really misleads us. And it can so easily happen. So we go from that safe, caring narrator who's guiding us, protecting us, allowing us to make great decisions, suddenly into becoming the bully that dominates. And one of the key words I wanted to talk about today was, how do we begin, each of us individually in our everyday lives, begin to become discerning around knowing when our inner voice is serving us, and then being ready to engage with the bully when inevitably the bully arrives or the saboteur arrives. And the key word around that is noticing. So what does that mean? It's about self-awareness. It's about being prepared to know and feel and experience and be prepared for the bully when the bully inevitably arrives. And I think that's the power of, and the challenge of being a human being, is having these wonderful superpowers we all have, the inner intelligence we talked about, to be able to actually make great decisions, really be attuned so well that we're actually running all the time. Our inner voice is running all the time. But somehow in an externally focused world, an overwhelmed world, a busy world, it becomes challenging for our inner voice to actually remain as the kind narrator. And it's so easy to become distracted and become the bully and the saboteur. And through the process of noticing, and again, we'll talk about a couple of tools right now that can enhance our ability to notice how and when that narrator shifts from being the kind narrator into the bully. And one of those is creating space. And, you know, I've often mentioned before, and every client I work with, it's about breath. Just taking 2-3 seconds is a great space creator to actually create the space, literally create the space to notice better. How is my inner voice serving me now? What is my inner voice saying to me? And is it going rogue? Is it on the way to actually be getting distracted and moving to a place of ill service and to a place that's beginning to dominate me and fog my ability to make great decisions, or fog my ability to be able to actually engage in a way that serves me from my inside out? And the power of noticing is that it is a very subjective experience. And the more we practice, like in golf or any other sport, the better we become. And there's a compounding beneficial effect of when we're successful in noticing when that rogue inner voice is popping up, we engage, we notice. And when you're noticing, you're halfway through the process of actually checking and testing and challenging the inner voice that doesn't serve, and shifting ourselves back to the inner voice that does, that kind narrator that we talked about. And that is the central theme, I think, of today's conversation. And if you take nothing else away, it's around taking the time and creating the space to notice. And one of the tools very often is simply, you know, the noticing and breath go hand in hand. So which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do I take a breath first and then notice? Or do I notice first and then take a breath? And for me, it's about noticing first, being so attuned to actually, you know, having this subroutine of noticing running in the back of your mind, that it's ready to actually identify and become very discerning very quickly about the shift that you're observing from your inside out when your bully narrator is arriving and coming on the scene, creating the space to engage And then the second tool is actually separating from and calling out the bully for what it is. And Ethan Kroos had a great podcast. I'll share this later as well, but it's a great, and he's got a book. I'm not sure if you can see it now. It's a book called Chatter. I'll share it in the links as well in the chat after the session. But it's about how we engage with and harness the power of our inner voice, the very topic that we're talking about today. But one of his key strategies right throughout the book and his own personal experience was noticing, but actually detaching and separating from the bully. And and Susan David has developed a process, a very, very simple process and tool. And Susan David is the author of Emotional Agility. Again, another tool I integrate into everything I do for my own practice and the practice with clients is around simply saying, I am noticing that the bully is here. I'm noticing that I'm angry. I am noticing that Seamus is angry. So you're actually creating space from the space of, you're creating through the heart focused breathing, or just you're taking a breath. You're creating a space to better notice, and then you're taking a step to engage from that space to call out the bully or the dominant or the unhelpful inner voice. I'm noticing that the bully is calling me a fool. I'm noticing that the bully is saying, why did you do that? I'm noticing that whatever it is. And the more we actually practice that process of creating space, engaging with, calling out, it can be a powerful weapon for us to actually begin to actually bring back, challenge the narrator and bring us back to the kind, super efficient problem solver that we all possess within ourselves. And I suppose the final tool I would mention is from a program called Positive Intelligence. A guy, Shirzad Shamin, the program I completed a couple of years ago. And another tool to think about using, and can be integrated with the one I've just mentioned as well, is actually naming the bully. And you could say, oh, here's the bully again. Here's the dominator again. Here's the dictator again. Or my own favorite, here's the little general again. To try and undermine and call out through that process of noticing the fact that this thing is there, it's not serving me, I'm calling you out. And then that can be a great way of bringing us back, engaging with, challenging, and bringing us back to a place where we're actually serving ourselves rather than the bully dominating and fogging our thought, which it absolutely does. And shares that often use the term saboteur of how this inner voice, this unhelpful inner voice, sabotages us and doesn't allow us to perform in the problem-solving way that we're built and designed to do and be. So I think that's really, I suppose, some of the key points I wanted to bring about today, to really invite people to think about the choices we have, the power we all have within ourselves to be able to engage, notice the bully when it arrives, notice the bad, if you want to call it, inner voice, and to shift it back to the great and powerful inner voice we all possess. And through that process of noticing, using the tools maybe I've just described, to actually deliberately, intentionally take time to engage and notice the inner voice when it's unhelpful and experience how that actually feels and how we can benefit from that through repeated practice of that cycle, you'll be amazed at how quickly you can become discerning and becomes an automatic part of your process to call out the bully, the dominant unhelpful force that's within us that we've all experienced, that we can actually integrate into our day-to-day, everyday lived experience. And it'll always be there, but what I'm describing here is the way to actually minimize its impact and to harness the power we all have through the kind narrator. So our ability to do this basically becomes child's play, just like crossing the road, basically. So that's it, Alec, and I hope people have enjoyed the conversation and have taken something away that you can build into your own everyday practice.